Okay, we're on. Good afternoon. Welcome to the AquaStax Hour with me, Long Steve, on a Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. UK time. So, first off, I have to apologise for the shabbiness of my previous stream on Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock in the evening. Although I did the usual hour and 20 minutes or so, I didn't actually get much done. I ended up floundering around trying to figure out why a particular bit of visualization code to just draw a rectangle on the screen wasn't working, and I never did get it to work properly. And then I got a strange interruption by somebody coming in our front door when I wasn't expecting them to. Anyway, so that's the apology for the last shabby stream out of the way. Oh, someone's joined already. Jacobs, good to see you. I was just saying how shabby my previous stream was, but hopefully today will be better. When I do it in the evenings on a Tuesday evening, it's like after a long day, and I'm pretty tired. Whereas this time of the day, it's still daylight, at least outside here, so I always feel a little bit more awake. And I've had a chance to just have a bit of lunch and a cup of tea, and now I'm ready to start. So first thing I was going to do actually was address a comment I had from the last stream by a guy called Eugene Esker. I don't know if he'll come along today or not, but he commented that when I was running my code, the CPU on my Mac was like really hot. It was like over 90 degrees plus. And I think what it was that I use a special gulp task or a set of gulp tasks to run the sort of development workflow. So I run gulp from within my editor, SlickEdit, and gulp is just a program which allows you to automate various things. And what it does is one of the things I've told it to do is watch for any changes to the source files in my code. And when they get changed, if any of them are JavaScript, it runs the JS hint task on them, and that tells me if anything's unusual. Like down here, we've got JS hint expected exclamation mark double equals, but in store exclamation mark single equals. Anyway, gulp watch uses a particular Node.js feature called file.watchFiles, and file.watchFiles actually polls. It constantly checks to see if those files you've given it as a list have changed. And it does that by default every 100 milliseconds, so 10 times a second it's polling, and that was what was causing my machine to spin up. That, coupled with the heat in my office here and the multiple monitors and the lights and all that sort of stuff, it was using literally 100% of one of my CPUs. I got a 4-core CPU. Anyway, it took a bit of digging to get into this, and I finally found it, and you can actually pass an interval parameter into gulp watch, and I reduced it to 750 milliseconds, which is less than a second still, but much more than 100 milliseconds. I was playing around with that number actually, and what I found was that if it was 1 second, so 1,000 milliseconds, it was actually still too slow. I could type a bit of code, hit Control S to save, hit Control C to jump to Chrome, and I could, at some odd occasion, still be waiting half a second or more for the thing to auto reload. And what was happening was that was too slow, so I had to reduce it to 750. Oh, hi, Meta Frogster, good to see you. Anyway, yes, so I've reduced my gulp task to 750 milliseconds watching time for changes on files, but that's still way more than 100 milliseconds, which it was doing. And now my fan's not spinning. The CPU is still sitting at 92, but it was going up to like 98, 99, and the fan was spinning. And now I think the task is just sitting there using, let's see, top. It's using like 10, 15% CPU. One of the node ones, it's skirting between 11 and 24. There we go. But before it was literally on 100% constantly. Right. So there's a bit of background. If Eugene turns up, then I'll thank him for pointing it out to me and making me at least dive in and have a look at it. Anyway, let's go back to that. So another thing I did at the end of last stream, which I haven't done before, is not commit any of the code I wrote to GitHub. I've always been doing that. End of the stream, I commit the code to GitHub, or just after the stream. And I didn't last time because it was so shabby and it didn't work. And I thought, I'll just leave it. And next morning, after I'd had a bit of sleep, I had a look at the code to see why it wasn't working. And what was happening was, let's start up Chrome. There we go. Hi Jacobs, thanks for listening to my rant there. But anyway, what was happening in Chrome was I was trying to highlight the collisions that were occurring. So when these two blocks occur, I was trying to just put a little rectangle on the screen at the point of collision. and it wasn't working. I couldn't see anything, and all I'd done was like done a draw rect on the code. But it turns out that what I did, let's change. So I fiddled around with it and did something different. I used draw segment, but if I do draw rect, hl.draw rect, its origin. It didn't seem to matter where I put it, but I shall put it in the place I've calculated now. So grid pos. Destination is a point, so cc.p, excuse me, grid pos.x, and then plus. I was doing like some very small rectangle, so only something like about +3. Grid pos.y +3. And then a color. I was just using the color I defined. Let's do a black one. Oh no, black. So I was doing that, and nothing was appearing on the screen. So let's just jump back. See, that live reload happened pretty quick there. See, oh, well, actually, you can see that. It's tiny. It's just about there. Whereas before, I must have had it even less than that. I think it might have been 2 by 2. And I haven't looked at all my stream to go back and see what I was trying to do yet. But I think I was just trying to put a pixel on the screen or something. And you see that's still appearing as well. But what I discovered was that when I was doing it so small, it just wasn't appearing on the screen. Literally not there. And I ended up having to add something like about +10. And then I saw it on the screen. And then I thought, right, now I know the bit of code's working. I'll carry on. And I'll not do rectangles. What I'll do is I'll draw a segment, which is actually the way to draw a line. So there is no draw line called in Cocos2d-JS. You have to do draw segment. And that's start and end of a line segment. So I was very confused by this when I looked at the documentation for draw segment. Oh, that's a reminder of something else I was going to do as well. Let's go to the documentation. APRF. So a segment, I thought, was a segment of a circle, because it's draw node. The documentation here for draw segment, there it is, talks about draw a segment with a radius and a color. It's like, okay, radius. So to and from line width and color. And what's a radius? What's that going to do with it? Don't know what that is. It's not part of the parameters. And I think I was just confused and thinking that draw segment was some kind of draw arc or draw a segment of a circle. You know, almost like a segment of a cake or something like that. But it turns out it's not. It's just draw a line. So all draw segment does is draw line. And from and to, you can specify the line width and a color as well. So I hadn't even realized that before. So draw segment draws a line. So what I did was my code inside grid kind of has a little bit of object so that it sticks onto the falling block when a collision occurs, and it can stick multiple ones of these on because the block is consisted of multiple cells. And then this loop inside game.js after a collision has occurred. So if these collision points have been set, and there's more, there isn't none of them, it loops over them and draws these collision points. And what I did was each collision point is effectively a collision between 2 grid cells. So it's one of the grid cells where the falling block is, and then one actually on the grid. So there's the grid position, which is there. So it's grid block pos. So the CD is the collision point. I could call that CP, shouldn't I? CD is a bit of a awkward thing to have to remember. Collision point. CP. So the collision point has various bits of data in it, which I'm actually going to go and tweak in a minute to make them easier to understand. Can't I see that? It's hiding behind my chat window. CP. There we go. Right. And that's it. So collision point grid block is the block within the grid that the collision block occurs, that the colliding block is, and half block size. So that point is the center of it, and then this point here, bpos, is the block pos. I haven't used block pos because that's already used up there. That's the block or the cell within the block that the collision occurs with, and actually that's it. That's like a 0, 1, or 2 x and y position. So it's actually the cell X and Y positions, not the actual absolute position, which the block pos is. But anyway, having got the midpoints of both those blocks, I then just draw a line segment between them. So what you can see now, if I save that, hopefully it'll work. Yeah. So when a collision occurs, and this is any sort of collision, it's, there we go. So there's actually two blocks are colliding there. So that block pointy collides with that, and that block collides with that point there. How's the game development so far? I think it's going okay. I mentioned at the end of last stream that I was just under 40 hours in total, which is about a working week of development. If I spent full time doing this, 8 hours a day, I'd have a working week of development done. And what I've got so far is I've got these blocks, and they're moving around and rotating, and they're colliding with each other. And I'm just about at the point where I'm figuring out the proper collisions, and it's working pretty well. So I think that's not a bad amount of progress for a week's worth of work, even though it's taken me 3 months to actually get there. There we go. So there's an interesting collision. There's that block, that cell there, collided with that cell there, and it's red because it's what I call a axis collision. So it's a flat axis, X or Y axis. I can have two of them here. So the two collisions will occur when this one lands. There we go. There are two lines between those two blocks. Now if I do this pointy one, then that'll be a single collision. Hi Gozu, good to see you. So this pointy one will have a single blue line indicating a slope collision between these two cells. And similarly, I can do one down here. So basically, I've now got the difference between an axis and a slope collision, where it's occurring, how many times it's occurring, and so on. And what I'm going to do now is use that information to work out whether or not the block should slide left or right when it lands. Because obviously, what I want to do is, if a block lands like that, it should slide down until it rests with that cell there on the corner. And other ones should slide off. And if you put a block like that, then that one lands on it. Again, it should slide down to the left or to the right. And in numerous other situations, it will or won't slide. And following on from that is the breaking of blocks as well. So if you get a slope collision at the right type, like this one here, so it's a slope collision that can't slide, then the point bit should break that purple block. Anyway, that's lots of stuff. Oh, now my CPU is spinning up, because I think probably there's lots of stuff going on. It's also, OBS is encoding stuff, Chrome is running my game at 60 frames a second, lots of stuff's occurring. Anyway, but at least my gulp task isn't using all the CPU. And it looks like, yeah, 97, so 96, 97 is the kind of limit for the fan coming on, I guess. Right. Oh yes, one more thing before we start. I checked Twitter earlier, and the company that makes the IDE, or the editor I use, SlickEdit, they sent out a tweet saying, weekly tip, a great way to make a table of numbers is to make a column/block selection and use Enumerate dialog. Edit other Enumerate. I thought, what does that do? I'll have a quick look at it. And if they do that, I'll try and act on their weekly tip whenever I get a chance to. So, what did it say? A great way to make a table of numbers. So I guess if I wanted to do something like, I don't know, define an array with a whole bunch of numbers in, I can just do it in line here, can't I? Where was I? Here we are. It says use column block select. So Control B is select block, and I can do that. I can do it here. Edit select block, and that literally lets you choose a block selection rather than, I use Control U there to unselect, rather than a line selection like that, or a word selection. So let's have Control B, and then we use edit other enumerate. What happens? Start increment number of digits to pad. Ah, so I just get that. Cool. Control Z, trying to undo it. There it is. Undo. Let's try that again. Nope, I missed the edit other enumerate. So start at 0, increment by 1, pad to 2 digits, as have hexadecimal. Aha, does within hex, right? Well, let's do something else. Let's do edit other. Oh, where's it gone? Enumerate. Let's start at 8, increment by 4, and do hexadecimal. Invalid expression. Oh, increment by 41. 4. Nope. Start at 8. Ah, there we go. 8, C, 10, 14, 18. Yep. Okay, that's kind of handy. I could use that in some situations, I expect, rather than ending up doing something like this, where you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you end up typing lots of things. Another really cool SlickEdit feature is the macros. I'll just use that while I'm here. So if I wanted to put commas in after all these, I could do this. I could just do comma. Oh, I can get it wrong. There we go. I'm hitting comma down and end in kind of like a sequence. What I could do is do that as a macro. So we do macro, record macro. So I want to do comma and down. That's about all I need. I could do comma down and end. Macro, stop recording. Don't care about giving it a name because it's a temporary one. And execute last macro. What's that? F12. Actually, Control F12. So if I hit Control F12, it just does that. Whee. Let's say I want to do something slightly more complicated by changing this into some kind of format. So let's do macro, record macro, and what I want to do is I want to go back by 2, put a comma and a space and a comma and a down, and then leave it like that. Macro, stop recording, and then if I do Control F12 now, it just repeats that over all the lines. So obviously that doesn't mean anything, but I can do all sorts of interesting things there in a quick macro feature. Right, that's enough of that. I shall tweet to SlickEdit and see if they can watch my video. Right, so I was just going to go back into the grid function. This is my collide block with grid data, and when a collision occurs, then it puts a bit of data into the block, so the moving block that's falling down in this case. But it does so in a rather awkward way, and it's not very consistent. Basically, it clones the cell that the collision occurs at, puts that in there. In fact, it uses that as the object, and then it adds a few extra things to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make that an object in its own right. So new object, and then c.cell equals that. So we put the cell in. We put in the collision, which is a actual integer number. Then we put in the grid block position, and then the grid block object itself, which is also the number. And inside cell, you've got cell obj and cell pos. Is there anything else inside cell that I might want? Cell obj and pos. That'll do for now. It was just I didn't like, when I was debugging this the other day, I was going through the object and I couldn't really pull out the different fields very easily because cell has cell obj. Cell has a couple of other bits inside it. Anyway, so that's now cell. That means I have to change this bit of code here. So it's not, so cp equals collision, block.collision points I. cp.collision, that's using that. So the grid position is cp.grid block pos, yep. But the block position is cp.cell.x. And I think it's cp.cell.y. Let's just make sure that still works. Yep. I was confused by this particular indicator first of all. I thought, why is that too long? How is that block colliding? But actually that cell there that you can see, the one right at the top, is actually colliding with that cell below it, because it's that point of that triangle sits on the top of that one. And the same down below, that triangle there sits on that one. So there's actually a long, there's two collisions, one there and one there, so it looked like a long collide, or a long line, whereas in this case it's just a shorter line. So if I do something like that, get another short line. And if I do that, it should be red. Is it red or green? It's red, yes. Okay, so now what I want to do is in here, or somewhere in here, decide whether or not it's going to slide. So highlight collision. Now, this is just highlight collision, so I'll leave that for now. Test for sliding. Here we go. So the test for sliding is called here. So we've got block and collision. Actually, I don't need the collision itself is stored in the block as well. That's a bit of a side effect I may not want to do, but actually no, that's not, is it? The cell collision is stored in the block, or the cell collisions, but the overall collision is passed out. Let's see. I may or may not want to care about that parameter being passed in. So let's do test for sliding, see how much of that we can implement. Handle moving the block left or right, depending on the self.block.slide direction. Okay, so it looks like I've already decided that test for sliding should probably set something else in the block as well, which is fine. So implement this properly. What does it check the collision points? Data. If you're interested in having some fun while you're watching Jacobs, you can modify the hat and get it to do things by typing in hat or > hat to the chat. If I do that, there it goes, it's running a little Cylon, and you can change the color by doing hat Cylon, and I think it's it's RGB values. So if I want a green one, I can do, oh that's blue, red, green, blue in hex. There we go, there's a green one. And there are a few other hat commands you can give it as well, and it'll automatically, I think it pulses white when somebody joins the room, and if you follow me, it'll give you a rainbow pattern as well, or you can just get it to do a rainbow pattern by typing > hat rainbow. I think the color will set it to a fixed color, and both color and Cylon take color values after it if you need to, or if you don't put one in, it'll give you a random color. So pling hat color will just do a random color. There it is. I think you can do pling hat clear. There we go. No, is it clear? Rainbow pulse. Oh, I think, yeah, let's say clear, but it didn't work. Tell you what you could do. Do color 0. There it goes, that's cleared it. Excellent. I don't know why I still say pling for exclamation. I can't remember where that came from. I think it's an old Unix thing where at the beginning of Unix scripts you have a hash and a pling, as they used to call it, and then you do /bin/sh or something like that for specifying the shell that you want to run a Unix script on. I don't know why it's called a pling. Maybe it's just shorter form of exclamation. Anyway, check the collision points data. So what we want to do is something similar to this, I suppose, isn't it? Oh, somebody joined the room. Welcome, Metafroxter again. Is come back. Oh, and Seeker07, good to see you. I was just explaining to Jacob about my hat. You can try some hat commands if you like. They all work in the chat. Anyway. So we're doing this. Now, how do I determine what the collision type is going to be? What I want to do is check the various values of my grid blocks and my my grid cells and my block cells in order to see which way they're going. Let's just dive into block and remind myself what they are. If I split that window, let's bring it down a little bit. So we've got grid cell equals cp dot grid block obj. It's an unusually named thing for it, but I think that's what I'm after. And then I want block cell equals, I think it's going to be cell dot tile cell. I could call it, yeah, I called it cell, haven't I? Right. So that's they're the sort of integer numbers that represent my triangles and things. And now I want to figure out whether they're sloping or not. So let's do a couple of utility functions that I might lift out later on. Is left slope C for cell. I'm going to have to cough. I'm going to get a little bit of a cough. I'm just going to mute myself and then cough so you don't get exploding microphones or exploding speakers. There we go, that's better. Had a sip of tea as well. I could use my hotkey to mute, but Apple M for muting also minimizes my window as well. So never mind. Oh, hi Colorless, good to see you. So if C, now I've done this in another place. I have definitely done this or done something similar to it. Let's just make sure I'm not going to duplicate any code. Oh, there's my block. Let's just. Maybe it was code I did before. I'm just basically things like that, isn't it? Oh, I know what it was. It was I think it was some throwaway code that I got rid of. I'm not going to dive into the source control system to find that again. I'm just going to write it again if I need to. Yeah, I didn't leave it hanging around anywhere. I tend to delete or comment, or at least I tend to comment stuff out and then delete them after a while when I don't need it anymore. So I've got square. That's close enough. That'll do. I'll borrow that. So if we've got a left-hand slope, where's my block? There they are. Right, so left slope. I'm thinking slope to the left causing it's going to be negative x movement. So that's going to be either a type 2, so if it's 0, 2, or 2, 0, or a 4. So if it's going to be 0, 4, or 4, 0, then we do that. And then is right slope and that one, right-hand slope, is going to be 1 or 3, yes. So, got those functions. I guess do we want square? No, because they're going to actually test for just the points. See, 0, 2 is only a point like that. It's not a square. Square would be 2, 4, because it would need a 4 triangle in the same cell. So that's going to give us just the points. Actually, as well, there's a couple of fast paths out of this. So if collision and axis collision, so if at any point any of the blocks or any of the cells in the falling block have landed on the grid and an axis collision has occurred, that's a flat on a flat, and it means that that there is going to be no sliding in that case. Welcome Max the Monster, good to see you. axis collision does not equal 0, then we can return false straight away. Then we've got, oh actually I should put block.isSliding as false. Am I going to do that? Yeah, going to have to do that. No, it goes there, doesn't it? Then is there a slope left or right? So if either of these slopes, so there's a couple of special cases I'm going to have to test for, I think, but the general case is going to be if is left slope block cell. Oh, I tell you what I could do is slope as well, can't I? I might be able to optimize these later if I need to. Live coding TV support. Welcome. So, isSlope block cell. At the moment, let's just do isSlope grid cell. Let's see what happens. Give that a try. I'll need some way of showing what's going on. We shall set block.isSliding true. Because there's a couple of interesting cases where you've got a left slope and a right slope. In theory, a block shouldn't be able to slide. So we'll have to see what's going on there. Plus, I've got to handle the point cases as well. But for now, that'll do. Block.isSliding true. Do I want to break out of the loop? I might just do that for a quick bailout. Right, so where am I going to use this? Test for sliding happens here. Handle the block moving left or right. So at the moment, when a test for sliding occurs, it's not going to insert the block into the grid. It's just going to move it. Or in fact, it's going to do nothing at all. But what I should do in here is do something to test. I know what I'm going to do. I need to add a slide direction as well, don't I? For now, let's just do a let's just move it to the right a bit. So new block position plus equals dy. Let's do an x. We can add dx plus equals something interesting. We can add dy to it, can't we? Because it's going to go down at 45 degrees. So let's just do a dx equals dy. Is dy negative? Yeah, dy is negative because it's always falling down. So we want to add minus dy to that, and then we want to move it. So this is going to do something weird, but it'll show us something happening anyway. Right, self.moveBlock by dy. Have you ever worked with Docker before? Random question, but briefly, yes. I've used Docker to set up, well, just to play. I haven't actually done it in production, but I've definitely looked at Docker to set up some web services. So I've installed Node.js and Ubuntu, and what else do I use? Nginx. What can you do with it? Basically, it's a way of packaging up your application. So when you write a big web app, or even a big application that uses lots of components. So if you're distributing, say you write a web server or a web some kind of web app that you're using Apache, you've got some PHP, you got a whole bunch of stuff, and you want to deploy it to a set of servers. You could do it the manual way. You could basically take your server, maybe create an Amazon virtual machine, install Apache on it, you install PHP on it, you do a bunch of other things, then you put your code on it, and then you use it. Or what Docker lets you do is take all that process and, using a set of additional tools, automate it so that you create basically a executable server package that's like a Docker what do they call them? Docker container. You create a container, and the container has all of your runtime in it, and then that container can be deployed on servers a bit more easily than a full manual install of something. And the idea being that you can run. I always thought it was behind the VPS technology. Yeah, it's a different, slightly different level to that. So VPS is virtual private servers and things. You use it. You can run Docker containers on virtual private servers, or you can run them on real hardware or do other things. But it's much more of a package your system up for deployment and let somebody at deployment time choose a bunch of other things, like how it runs, how many containers there are, how much memory they get, and all that sort of stuff. It's quite interesting technology, quite easy to use as well. Actually, I quite enjoyed it. I might use it. Actually, I might package this up into a Docker container for deployment. I will go away. Sorry, phone call. Cancel that. Phone going off, but I can't cancel it. It's my landline. There we go. It's gone. Right. Where was I? Docker containers. Yes, I might package this app up as a Docker container because it's just going to be a few things on a web server, but then that might let me deploy it really easily. Anyway, I was going to test it, wasn't I? Here we are. We're running. Right. So let's see if we get a slope. So if I do that, there should be a slope, and nothing happened. Let's see. Self.highlight collision. We did that bit. Test for collision, but it didn't let me determine whether or not there was a collision there. So let's dive in and debug that. Are you looking at Docker yourself or something, Jacobs, or are you doing some web apps? I think it's not just for web apps. It's for anything you deploy on a server infrastructure. So you could package your database up inside a Docker container, or you could package up Node.js services, or anything you wanted really. Although generally, when you're putting something on a server, it's because you've got a front end that's going to access it, and that front end is quite often a web app in some way. So you'd package up the back end. You could package up your Node.js service with APIs. You could package up your database. Then you could package up your web front end, which was a web server itself, along with the code. So you could have like 3 containers, deploy those 3 containers, and then there's your whole system is running then. All right, let's go back to the break. Let's see, block.is. Did I set false? Yes, of course I did, didn't I? I've been chatting away, getting distracted by interesting questions, and then I need to actually set the right value rather than false. It needs to be true. So I'm sure it'll work this time. Something wacky is going to happen. See how I sit there. Oh, no, it still didn't do anything. I'm expecting it to move sideways. So let's see if it even gets in there. So that one I'm expecting a bit of a sideways movement. Nope, it's not. So let's jump into there. Yeah, that one. Right, so we're definitely down in here. So block cell is 19. What's that in hex? 1. So 19 in hex is 13. 1, 3. So that's 1 and 3, which is my square. I'm looking at the triangle type, so I've got 1 and 3, so that's the square. And that's the block cell, so that's where it's landed. Yep, sorry, that's the falling cell, that's the square. And then we've got the next one, the cell on the grid should be a type 1. Yes, it was, wasn't it? So we've got grid cell is 1. So if it is slope block cell, oh, I've got an and in there, and is slope grid cell. No, I need an or. Right. So still didn't do anything. Reload. Bink. So there we've got 49, which is the square one, and 4, which is the left-hand slope one. So is slope 4 should return true, shouldn't it? Let's just 0, 4 or 4, 0. Yep. Dive in. So slope 49 is going to be false. Slope 4 that should return true. Yeah, block.isSliding true. So we've set block.isSliding true, bailed out, and now we're in here. So dx and then self.move block by. So dy is minus, dx is that. So a very small slide. Let's see, dx. Actually, I kind of want it to go to the left, don't I? So I do need the direction of slope so that I can do a left movement in here. I might just fake that for a minute because I know this first block that comes down is always fixed to be this red tile. So it's always going to have a left slope on it. And does move block by, does that kind of, yeah, it should just set the position. So what happens next? So it sits there, it's not doing anything. Didn't crash, did it? No, but it hasn't come back in here again. I wonder if, no, it hasn't come here. Why hasn't it moved the block down? It's not coming into there, is it? Oh, it is, right. So now I've set is sliding true, and dx, that must have been a bit of code I had before that I don't know. I must have been planning something. I should probably do that. I don't do that every time, shouldn't I? Handle the sliding block. I mean, handle the sliding block is happening down here, isn't it? So let's get rid of this. Right. So this, the sliding block bit. Oh, actually, what I was going to do as well was make it negative. So let's just do that. Ooh. Yay, it moved. Excellent. And then it got stuck at the bottom. Well, that was actually more successful than I expected. See what that does. Okay, it definitely moves. Will it move quickly if I blast it down? Because it should be take into account the long. It doesn't. It slows down, but that's okay because I think the block slows down automatically when it gets to near another one. That was quite cool. And my center points move. So it's going to slide down, and then it causes a collision. Probably because it's not moved out of the collision range properly. So I'll have to think about that. Let's follow on a bit more with these slides and see if I can get them to go the right way without faking it. Right. So what we want to do is test for sliding. I mean, if is left slope or is right slope. What we kind of want to do is if there's two slopes, then we don't slide. So I can't just do an is left slope, go left, is right slope, go right. Let's see. I can just do if the grid cell, if is slope one or the other. I'm going to duplicate these calls. They're only quick calls. So let's just do a if I want an is left slope and is right slope, what that effectively means is the block coming down is a pointy one that's landing on something. So that's going to just like pointy block falling. Handle this later. We've got else is left slope. Then we've got grid cell. So if the grid cell, if the collision occurs like that, pointy block in the grid, these aren't always going to work out the same way though, are they? Yeah. I'm thinking out loud as I go. I'm trying to decide whether or not this is the right way, but it's a good start. We'll tweak it later. I have a feeling that I might have to do a few other things based on the direction of slope for all of the different collision points. So we'll see. Because what I'm doing it in here is just on one point. So pointy block in the grid, else, then we know if is left slope or left slope grid cell, block is sliding true, and block dot slide dx equals -1. I'm going to use that as a multiplier. So slide, I'm just going to call it slide x. Left slope is going to go left, yep. Another else, I think, if right slope. Equals +1, and let's do block.slidex is 0 up here just to make sure we end up with a default. Right, this we don't need anymore. Right, so then up here, so what we want is negative dy multiplied by self.block dot slide x. So now hopefully it should go left or right correctly. So it's going to go left, yep. Now let's make a right hand one there. There's a right slope. Yay, goes right. Oh, and that one slid off. That's to do with the incrementing and decrementing, I think, and then there's a less than or equal sign somewhere. Let's see if that one slides left. It should do. Oh, that one slid off as well. Lovely. That one should slide right and then rest. Excellent. Oh, look at the collision points getting interestingly marked. So there's a whole bunch of these. I mean, that one should slide down and stop. Lovely. It's kind of slow. I don't like the slow sliding. I might be able to tweak the speed of that. Another interesting thing is what happens if halfway through a slide I shift it manually. Oh, I can't. That's good. I want to be able to do that. Or I want to be able to not shift it. Oh, interestingly, that one didn't slide. That one might have broken another way. Yeah, I can't move the block while it's sliding. You kind of want to be able to, if possible, shift it out one way or another. No, that one won't trigger. That one might actually. What will that do? Yeah, that's got stuck. I think that's probably because it's thinking that's a left slope and a right slope together, which is explicitly checked for and ignored in here. Yeah, it's left and right. So we should handle those scenarios properly. That one slide. Ooh, why didn't that slide? That's interesting. Yeah, some of them aren't sliding. Possibly to do with the multiple attachment points. It's just there. And if it's looping over a bunch of different places, it might get it wrong. Or it might be up here. Let's see. So that's a start. Let's see what other scenarios I need to sort out. So we've got sliding to the left. That kind of worked for me. Sliding to, this isn't going to work, I'm pretty sure of that. Oh, interestingly, it did work. I thought that would have given me a 2 points slide. Let's see if I can replicate that again. Yeah, there we go. Oh, I need to break. So what's that going to do? Is left... Well, I can just jump over those. Okay, so interestingly, if left slope block cell or right slope block cell, what do I got here? I got grid cell and block cell. I've got a 3 and a 4, which is correct. So one's a left. Ah, yeah, there one is left slope grid cell and grid cell. One's a block cell and a grid cell, isn't it? So I'm testing left block grid right. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different scenarios here. I've got to think about the best way of writing this code, because I can probably end up going down a complete rabbit hole of if else all over the place. So I wonder what I need to do is see if there's an easy way of doing it. I could look at my old code, but I don't want to do that. I want to just think about it for a bit. And maybe there's an easy way of doing it by looking at my numbering scheme. There might be a handy bit of maths that I can do that tells me whether or not they're going to slide left or right. That'd be rather nice if there was. But I think I'm on the right track. Once I get this working, the sliding is moving. You know, is definitely taking it one way or the other. There's that little glitch there where it doesn't slide all the way off. I wonder why that is. At this point, it still thought that the collision, you can see the little red line drawn between that cell and that cell, so it still thought there was a collision occurring with that cell. And then of course if it figured that if it thought there was a collision occurring with that cell, it's going to be an axis collision, so it's going to stop. So that means that the block isn't quite on the grid line boundaries. That was something I was thinking about the other day, that I should make sure that these blocks always end up positioning themselves on the correct boundaries when they're not sliding. I wonder if there's a way of doing that. I could test for block sliding is false. At that point, the sliding would have come out as false, and then it would have come into here. So what I need to do is just make sure that the make sure a block that's not sliding is aligned exactly with the grid, just aligned exactly with the grid. That's what I want to do. And best way of doing that would probably be, I had a bit of code earlier that did that. It was possibly in grid, collide block is position within grid, get grid position for point, get grid position for node. If I did that, I think I can then force the x position. So get grid, so self.grid.get grid position for node block. wonder if I can just do self.position.x. Yeah. No, I have to do set position. I don't know. Position. I think I don't actually need to do set position. I think I can do self.block.x. I'm going to look into this. Self.block.x equals gp the get grid position for node. Is that going to give me index get grid position for index? It's going to give me an x and a y. It's going to give me a pos multiplied by block size. So it's actually going to give me gp.x. That's what I want. Self.block.x. I'm literally going to stick that block straight into the grid at that position and see what happens. Although that's only down in the falling case when we've done test for sliding. When it's not going to fall, what I kind of want to do is collide block. I've got this test as the falling block can move sideways. Oh, that's literally horizontally sideways. Then I've got make sure the block that's not sliding. So if self dot block dot is sliding is if it's not sliding and dx we're not moving it left or right, then it's got to be aligned with a block. So self.block.x equal gp.x. Let's see if that does anything interesting. So I can still shift it, that's good. Shift this one down. So it still did that. Did that alignment code actually get hit, I wonder? Just checking my thing there. $350 self.block. Can I even do that? I mean, it does have X as a property, so I'm sure I can just call it to set it. Yep. So self.block is so this is going to be false to start with. So we can loop. There it is. It triggers there. So self.block x is 350. gp.x. So it's still the same. So it's definitely exactly aligned. 1, 2, 100. So that's going to be 0, 50, 100, 150. I'm trying to count the positions. 0, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300. It should be 300 at this point, not 350. Why is that? Ah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, it is 350, isn't it? No, it's 300. I'm going mad. So that shouldn't be there. It should move out. wonder why that didn't quite work. Let's see what that does. Yeah, that was an interesting one as well. That's not sliding at all. We had that glitch before, didn't we? I wonder, I might be able to figure that out. Does this land like that? No, this one's not landing at all. Oh, there it goes. Right. Let's see why this isn't moving out. So if it was there, it wouldn't slide down. Sorry, it wouldn't collide if it was there. That's what I mean to say. So let's just make sure that at that point 250, yeah, and self.block x is also 250. So it's definitely aligned nicely, and it's slowly sliding down because I'm breakpointing every frame. So let's try that one more time. So at this point, block x is 350. gp.x 350, so it's still right. Yet for some reason it's still got the collision point with that block on the bottom right, which is why it's getting the axis collision. See, now it's got collide block 0. That's interesting. Collision is 0, so there's no collision occurring. So it should fall down. We've got dx is 0, dy is minus, so it's going to be moving down. Why isn't it moving down? Could I have done something in block.move by? What's going on in that? dy is definitely moving down, because it's a negative number. Self.block.set position. So now we appear to have got stuck. Oh, I'm looking at there's another block appeared. It's not moving down, it's that block up there. There's a little pebble block appeared. Crazy. Do that again. No, that one I know doesn't collide properly yet. There we go, that'll work. So what I want is while it's sliding, it stops there at that point. Now is this the same block though? Is it another one that's appeared? Yeah, no, it's another one that's appeared. It's what I want to do is basically put a breakpoint at this point here. I think. So that's there. Test for sliding. That happens every now and again. Chrome locks the down key. Anyway, if I let it land, alright, so that's the first one. So it's arrived there, but self.block, what's its X position? Oh yeah, you see it's 250 its floating point little bit of value above 250. So at that point, it's still effectively going to be colliding with there. So why has it done that? Is that the... See, I don't want to move it. Collision is 0. Oh no, collision is 256. Yes, okay. So it's moving. Test for sliding. It's no longer sliding because it's blue. It thinks it's got an axis collision. I suppose I could do test for sliding. So let's do this. Was. And if we were sliding and then we're no longer sliding, we want to do this bit of code up here that locks the block into the place. So if we were sliding and now we're not sliding, then make sure we lock the block aligned with the grid. But we don't necessarily, at this point, we don't necessarily want to let's do an else, because we only want to lock it in place when it's actually finished moving, because it might be sliding, we might be able to fall further at that point. Let's see what that does. Okay, so it's going to slide down and then carry on, and then it falls. Perfect. Just what I wanted to see. Oh, that shifted across nicely. Not nicely. I didn't want it to do that, but still, it was something. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why it does that. Okay, there's another interesting edge case to deal with as well. This one's not going to. That kind of worked. I like my little arrow, little lines dictating where the sliding is going to. See, that was okay. So where the collisions are occurring, it's kind of helpful. So that one worked fine, didn't it? That one. Yeah, that one worked fine as well. See what that does. That's going to do nothing at all. Hi, Chihuahua. Good to see it. You've just got me at a point where it's this kind of sliding of my blocks is occurring. So they do slide off each other and fall down, which is okay. It's not perfect yet. There are several conditions that cause it to stop working. And sometimes it glitches like that and it shifted across. I wonder why it did that. That's probably going to be to do with the offsetting of the blocks within their grid cells, isn't it? Because I'm calling this function here get grid position for node, but I don't particularly want to do that. I want to do get grid position for a block that's within the cell. Highlight block cells is position within grid. Get grid position for node. Yeah, that's not what I want. It could be get grid position for point. Collide block with grid data. I probably want something that's a little bit more generic that gives me a actual grid aligned location for a falling block. Just looking at another bit of code here. Collide block with grid data. this isn't quite what I want here. I'm going to comment this now in case I don't get a chance to do it, because I've had an hour and 10 minutes now, so I'm probably going to call it a day for today's stream. But I will check all the code in, unlike last time when nothing worked. Now it's half working. Note that this word isn't quite what I want here. I need to work out the exact grid align position for the block. Okay. Do I want to try that now? I might do actually. That could probably be a grid function. Get grid position, blah, 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 get grid position, block nodes, blah blah blah. Set falling block. I mean, why don't I do a get grid index positions for block collision? I mean, there's a good one. It's definitely going to be using the boundary, isn't it? I think. Get grid block nodes. Create a set of draw node objects from the current grid not currently used. Okay, what I want to do is get block aligned grid position. That's suitably verbose. So we're going to do that. Is that aligned with that? Why is it not aligned? Tile bounds. And then we want to do bottom left index. Get grid index for point pos. Yep. Actually, do I even need the bounds? I don't, do I really? Tile bounds. Bottom left index. Then position somewhere here. I should have grid index, grid position for index. There we go. That's what I want. Completely lost the function I was just writing. It's disappeared in amongst the no. There it is. Right. Do I just return that? Yeah. So let's do get block aligned grid position. So actually we want self.grid.get block aligned grid position. Okay. And that fell off. Well, that didn't fall. Why didn't that fall? Interestingly, it's not also not triggering. Oh, there it is. Triggered another one. Let's try that. There we go. So block.x at this point is 250, and oh, I meant to single step that, but I think I hit the resume button by mistake. That's what I want. No. Is it breaking? Yeah, it is. Get grid index for point. Ah, right, that was successful. And that still jumps across to the left. Why did that jump across to the left? I wonder if it was adding too much. I'm getting floating point errors, or not errors, but the floating point rounding is probably causing these little tiny variations. I might have to look at that. I wonder if it would be better to pre-calculate the position. Ooh, IMT liquor, good to see you, or MTLCKER. Apologies for pronouncing your name slightly wrong there. I reckon if I actually take the block position where it is, when a slide is going to occur, so when we know it's going to slide, pre-calculate where it's going to go to, and make sure it makes it there. Because I can do that at one block, where I want to maintain the positioning of these blocks on the grid boundary, or on the grid alignment. It's important to sort of keep tabs of that, but I don't want that to occur while sliding, as obviously when it slides, the blocks are in between cells. So that's probably a kind of a state that needs to be maintained. And if I work out where it's going to, that way I can tweak the sliding speed as well, because at the moment the slide, because the diagonal movement is the same as the vertical movement and horizontal movement, but that means it's going diagonally along. It kind of feels like it's going slower. If you look at the block when it lands at the bottom, when the slide occurs, it looks like it slows down slightly. At least to my eyes, it probably isn't, but it looks like it does. So you might want to speed that up a bit. But if I'm adding unusual numbers to the x position, then I want to calculate or predetermine where the block is going to go. Well, there's a good one. Hey, that's going to disappear off forever now. It slid through the bottom of the floor. Awesome. I think I'm going to leave it at that for the moment, because that's an hour and a quarter. I've actually done something today and got something interesting happening, although only partially. We'll carry on with this on Thursday. I'm going to be doing it's Thursday today, next Tuesday, 8 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock in the evening. Do follow me if you want to get notified by live coding, liveedu.tv. I'll keep calling them live coding for a while, because that's what my brain is attuned to. And you'll get a notification. Anyone fancy giving me a rating today? No one's done so at the moment. You can just type !rate if you like. Here's somebody just joining as well, Judge GC. Sorry, I'm just about to end the stream, but thanks for joining. You can watch the video when it pops up again in a few minutes. They tend to take to process the videos, don't they? And then if you fancy an hour and a quarter of me yabbing on, what I will do though is submit this code to GitHub now while I'm at it. Let's see. It's all kind of reasonable. So here's the minor modification to my gulp file I made. I might actually commit that in a separate message. Just what did I change with config? Oh, this was something. So these are some changes I did make last stream. Also known as a cell, yeah. So I tweaked the game. So I got rid of my old collision test rectangle and I added an array of collision points, which is, so there we get rid of the initialization code. We've tweaked the structure around that quite a bit. And then down inside, highlight collision I changed that quite radically. And rather than use a block, I now use the little arrow or little lines that determine where the collision occurs. They added a new function, made a few tweaks to the collide block with grid data. Mostly did that last time, but it works now. Didn't work last time. And I renamed that. It used to be collide objects, and I've renamed it to collide cell. which I think is much more appropriate. Right, let's commit those. Commit. Hat just flashed on. I don't know why. Wonder what happened to the flash, to the hat. Add some. What was I going to do? Add some collision and alter the visuals so that lines are drawn. Start to work out the slope collision. Collision. What are they? The slope collision. Slope collision effects and block sliding. So far, blocks mostly slide, but there are a lot of edge cases to deal with. Commit that, and let's push those. What's the spec of your PC? Question there. Oh, okay. My PC is pretty old actually. It's a 2008, I think. One of the early first generation Core i7s, 920, running at 2.8 gigahertz. My Mac, which is what I'm developing on here, is a 2012 Mac Mini. Fairly top spec one though, so it's 2.8 gigahertz Core i7, 16 gig of RAM and an SSD in it. So it's running pretty well. I run both at the same time, so I've got my left monitor on the PC. My right monitors are on the Mac, but I can switch that around as well and have more on the PC and less on the Mac. And I share the keyboard and mouse using a tool called Synergy, which is really useful. You can run that on multiple machines. I can bring it up there. So my Mac is running Synergy as I think the Mac's a client and the server's on the PC, but I can do the other way around as well. Not sure what happened there. Something appeared on the chat window, and it hasn't actually shown my Synergy window. Never mind. Close that. Oh, there it is, sitting there. Yeah, it doesn't do much. It just sits there all the time. Anyway, so that's the end of that. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Much appreciated. As I say, do follow me. Follow me on Twitter as well if you like. And I will see you on Tuesday evening. That's when the next one's going to be. Yes, Tuesday evening. And I don't need the tweet from SlickEdit anymore. All right. Thank you very much indeed. Jump back to my intro screen, and I'll see you soon.